Why don't we go ahead and get this guy going? All right. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who are still here, this is it. This is our last presentation of the day. And we are definitely ending on a high note. Very excited about this. I am going to, I think I'm sharing my screen right now. Let's see. We are next going to be hearing from Priscilla McKinney, president of Little Bird Marketing, with a very cool topic: people buy from people, pandemic or not. I'm looking forward to sitting back and listening to this one. It is 6 o'clock here in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I am prepared to enjoy this. I've got my glass already poured of my Gaelic ale from Highland Brewing Company out of Asheville, North Carolina. No endorsement, buy local. And I'm ready to shut up. You know, for every other presentation thus far, we've gone through our ground rules, but this is the last one. Everybody's behaving themselves. I said it, knock on wood, that tech has been our friend. So we're going to throw these out the window. No, do continue to engage. Stay active in the chat, the Q&A, on social, on the hashtag QVIC2020. Outside of that, I got nothing left to say. I'm going to shut up, hand off to Priscilla, and let her do her thing.
Awesome, awesome.
Ooh.
So I'm going to go ahead and grab my screen share here in just a second, but I want to tell you all, I know it's been a long day for you, I'm sure, and even though it's been really good, as with anything, you know, it's a wind down. So I just wanted to let you know I'll be as quick as I can. But what we're going to do is make sure that before you get started, please connect with me on LinkedIn and let me, you know, make sure that you told me, hey, I saw you there. And I just want to have a great conversation with you. I'd love any kind of feedback, positive or negative, but really it's about the engagement and it's about us. You know, it would be ridiculous for me on this topic to not then acknowledge the people that are on this call. So please do me a favor and actually connect with me and make it meaningful and share something that you learned in this. So I am especially grateful at this point with the pandemic that we've been incredibly busy. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And that's how I'd like to walk into this particular presentation, is to say, I understand that everybody is in a different situation. And so I know that everything I say is not going to apply directly to you right now, but I want you to understand that sensitivity that I have and why I think it's very possible to bring that sensitivity and that authenticity into your presence online. And that will actually help us go through any hard time, not only, you know, a pandemic, but there's many other hard times to be had during business. So in that sense, anything that you can learn today, you can apply. I know you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to take in everything I have to say today. I do teach all the time on LinkedIn and I teach 12-week sessions. I can't possibly cram it in, but I hope that you take away 2 or 3 things that really make a difference for you in terms of how we actually sell people to people. I am going to have a Q&A session, so please make sure that you just jot down a quick question, and I'm happy to take it on any of this subject matter. And we're not talking about Twitter per se exactly today, but I'm also happy to take a question about Twitter. So it is no doubt that the rise of social media is just absolutely obvious, and fundamentally it has changed the way we live and we do business. And research shows a very frightening statistic now, and that's about how people go about and buy. And so you look at this picture, this is just obvious. Everybody goes, this is how we live. There's no big deal here. Hold on one second, I have a little hard time. There we go. But this is the research, and this should frighten us as companies, as insights professionals, as sales directors, as CMOs, whoever's on this call. The reality is that now the buyer is on an anonymous journey looking for what it is that will solve their problem, and they are 57% of the way through their buying process before a sales rep or a company rep or anybody is even aware of what they're doing. So being 57% of the way through the purchase decision is a problem if we don't get online, if we don't present ourselves as people that they can do business with. So as soon as we say we want to go online because everybody's online and we want to be found, enter the noise. So this, I keep this stat up. As soon as it comes out for 2020, I'll definitely post this and upgrade this presentation. But in 2018, this is what was happening in a minute. Representation of what was happening in 1 internet minute. And here's what we have for 2019. So let's single out, just for example, the Twitter. 87,500 people were tweeting in those 60 seconds. And let's actually take a look at, one thing that actually interestingly went down was there was 2.4 million snaps created in 2018 and then 2.1 million the next year. The one thing I want to show you on this really is about Google, 3.8 million search queries. And so when we think about how we show up and who shows up, I want to remind you that whether you're on Twitter or you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it is you are for business, those are nothing but websites. Websites that rank, websites that can be found through Google. So please don't just isolate it and think, oh, it's a social media channel, therefore it only counts, on its own. No, it's actually being connected through the Google ranking. So what companies are doing right now is they're saying, well, we're not really sure what to do. And I love this particular comic strip, but what if we don't change it all and something magical just happens? I think that's a lot of wishful thinking. And obviously we have a lot of people burying their head in the sands with what's going on in the pandemic and saying, well, we just won't pivot. We won't change. We won't do anything else. And we'll just hope that people maybe in this instance quit, buying from people. Maybe they will go back to just being loyal to a brand for no other reason. Or maybe they will just magically find us online, even though we're a super specialized insights company that does it differently than everybody else does, whatever the special little snowflake that you are. But this, I think we all can agree, is not going to work. So the issue that we have today, and what I was talking about, that people buy from people, pandemic or not, is that we have to, as a salesperson or as a customer service person or as an insights professional, we need to somehow insert ourselves somewhere along the buyer journey while it still remains anonymous. And how do we do that? Well, we do that very specifically and very inexpensively by showing up online in a dynamic and really in the best way possible. What's been so cool about social media, or as Guy Kawasaki would call it, he calls it God's gift to entrepreneurs, is that no longer do companies or professionals or freelancers or moderators or field directors, no longer do they have to go to the Madison Avenue agencies and say, hey, can you create an ad for me? No, they can go directly to the consumer. And in going directly to the consumer has fundamentally changed how consumers are behaving, and they are expecting more of a human experience. And I actually put this slide in here because at a lot of insights conferences that I've been to recently and spoke at lately, a lot of people are talking about the rise of humanity, the rise of the humans in context of the data. And I just want to remind you that the rise of the human also involves us in terms of how we pitch our wares and how we show up to be able to supply the survey, the qualitative study, the focus group, the whatever it is. But we have to honor the rise of the human. And if you embrace it, then you'll do much better in business for sure. I love this movie. I don't know if anybody can identify it. It looks familiar to anyone. I'll give you a second, but this is out of Glenn Ross, and he talks about the ABCs of selling. ABC. He talks about it all the time. This is the nice Ginsu knife set he's going to give away. But this kind of mythological set of leads that somebody is going to get if they're a good salesperson is absolutely super old school. And ABC for him stood for always be closing. And what I would purport is a change in a mindset. And that's what I would call ABH. So I'm going to give you a couple of a breakdown. These are 6 mindset shifts that I'd like to offer to you before we get into even how do I go about showing up online, because if you can grasp these particular mindsets and then tweak what you do online accordingly, you will absolutely honor the rise of the human and show up in a way that people can grasp, and people actually will desire to work with you no matter what company you're at, no matter what service that you provide. So the first thing I like to remind people is, and I usually talk with a lot of insights people, so I like to do a poll real quick. So if you are a diehard, if you prefer Uber, kind of, you know, think about, okay, who's an Uber person? And then who loves Lyft? So I'll get a room and it'll divide up. And honestly, I usually get about, well, it depends on where I am in the country or where I am in the world. Sometimes I'll use a black cab as an example. But my point is this: you have personal preference. Some people like to grab an Uber. They like the app. They like the interface. Some people, you know, love Lyft. But then my next question is this: the last time you got in that Uber or you got in that Lyft, did you say to the driver, just take me anywhere you want to go? We don't, because that's ridiculous. But what happens is that people have personal preferences: Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then we get in that vehicle and we say, oh, just take me anywhere you want to go. And so the huge mindset shift that needs to happen when we agree that people buy from people is that it does not matter what vehicle we have, what vehicle we drive. It matters how we show up and if we know where we're going, if we can provide those instructions. I'm on LinkedIn just constantly, and like I said, I teach it. But the reality is that people get really, way into the black hole that is social media. And I think that's why some people are afraid of going there professionally, is because it just zaps your time. But I argue that it zaps your time if you go out there and you let it co-opt your time. And you say, just take me anywhere you want to go. I guess I'll just do the next thing that you're asking me to. And if you look at the screen on LinkedIn, there's constantly all kinds of noise. There's things that LinkedIn wants you to do. But you have to always be the person who holds tightly to, but what is it I'm here to do? And if you can change that mindset, you can really make a go on social media. The other one is a hashtag that we started out on LinkedIn, and I'd love for you to follow it or give us some kind of a shout out there, but it's hashtag always be helping. And that's what we call Team ABH. It's no longer the ABCs of closing, but ABH. How can you go out and help? If you can help your most ideal client solve a problem, even if it's not one that directly brings you revenue, you build rapport with them, and then you will be able to get a shot at the business. I know there's a lot of COVID-19 studies going on. Every company has one, or so it seems. And I get that those are being very overtly helpful, but we need to be mindful also of who is it that it's helping? Who could we get it in front of? If you know a particular stat on your particular COVID-19 study that would be really helpful, say for someone in travel, then make sure you're tagging someone in travel. Make sure you're answering a question. Make sure that you're actually delivering the goods to the person to whom it would be most helpful. The other mindset shift I talk a lot about is show, not tell. You know, in kindergarten, the person at show and tell who actually brought the Rubik's Cube with them to explain it to someone was far more popular than the person who talked about it. Oh, it's a cube, it has colors, it's like the rainbow. You know, this is not interesting. If you say your company delivers fantastic insights, don't tell me, show me. And I'm not saying go out and give your work for free. I'm saying give someone a small slice of it. Don't expect them just to come and ask you every question about what it is you do. You need to actually put it on showcase. And some people are like, oh, I can't talk about myself like that. Yes, you can. We all do. It's about doing it in a way where you are being helpful to someone. So it doesn't mean you go out there and you be a braggadocio. There's a lot of ways to go out and explain what your company does without just verbal. Let me tell you what's going on. I love this next one, and I will admit that I stole it from one of my friends in the UK, Adam Gray. He teaches LinkedIn as well, but he talks about the duty of care. There are too many people going out on LinkedIn and Twitter and getting followers or connections for the sake of followers and connections. That is a ridiculous collection. We need to be able to put people in our group who we actually can take care of. And so when we invite someone to connect with us on LinkedIn, we tell them why, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks a little bit later, but we tell them why, but we also take the time to actually get ourselves involved, taking care of them, you know, and making sure that we can answer questions, ask really interesting questions, and make sure that we're delivering things that are of value to them. And that's why I asked you today, please connect with me on LinkedIn and give me some kind of feedback, because I care that if someone is going to connect with me, maybe they have an additional question about LinkedIn or about Twitter. That's fine. I don't want to bring anybody into my sphere of influence and into my online experience if I'm not going to be able to be helpful to them, and if I'm not going to somehow be able to meaningfully connect to them. This one is really an old Sandler system saying, if you feel it, say it. And I started this session by reminding everybody that some of us are drinking from a fire hose with work, and some of us are twiddling our thumbs and wish we could go back to work. And it's hard. It's really hard. And so I understand that some people feel maybe it's not appropriate to be out on social media, or it's not appropriate to be selling right now. On the contrary, this is our job, and this is what we need to be doing. And I really do believe that if you, as a human, can just, if you feel it, you can say it. For example, I can send a message to someone asking if they would like to have a meeting or would like a walkthrough of the COVID study or anything like that. But if I feel a little weird about it, I can even say, you know, I feel a little weird about asking you, but this is why it was brought to my mind. This is how we embrace the rise of our own humanity, to be able to talk with someone online in a way that we would like to be talked to. Obviously, that's the golden rule. But what I like to also bring up is what I call the platinum rule. And that is, treat others as they themselves want to be treated, right? I might want to be treated a particular way, but other people might want to be treated a different way. I'm going to be mindful about the way they want to be treated. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in persona work. But the last thing that will hopefully give you a mindset shift is this quote from Seth Godin. He said that content marketing is the only marketing left. And so gone are the days of just these advertising messages that interrupt and without any kind of personal message are going to deliver on the scale that content marketing can. Content marketing is bent towards being helpful, and advertising is bent on being interruptive. So we've already seen a major shift here, and so you need to actually change your mental view of things to understand that content is what people are looking for. They're educating themselves along the process of buying. So a quick word about persona development. You know how I mentioned with Uber and Lyft, a lot of people can get co-opted and just, you know, go any direction. People, well, look at this, someone's doing this on LinkedIn, I guess I'll do this on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter what other people are doing on LinkedIn. What matters is how you're showing up in front of your most ideal client. Again, we have to say, who cares about the vehicle? What I need to know is, where am I going? And you don't know where you're going on any social media or writing a blog or writing an email for that matter, unless you know who your actual audience is. And so I really encourage everybody to go do really great persona work. And I put a link there. We have a page that's what we call a pillar page on a website. It goes all the way through. What is a persona? How to do it? I won't go into it here, but I've got to tell you, ask your marketing office. Unfortunately, a lot of times those get done in a silo in a company. Someone has done a persona and then it got filed in a drawer. But go think about, who is it you most want to talk to? And I have just a couple of 5 questions here that what I refer to as my secret sauce. Besides, of course, their demographic, what's their role? What are they looking for? What do they do every day? We need that. But what we really want to do is understand something a little deeper about them. What keeps this person up at night? Yes, they might be an insights director, an in client. They may be a shopper insights person. I don't know what their role is, but let's really go a little bit deeper and think about what is keeping them up on Sunday. That's talking about their anxieties. What gets them going on Monday morning? That's a motivation. That's a very positive. We want to also talk to very strong motivators of people who are looking for the services that we offer. And I like to ask about, how does fear of missing out emerge for them? What is it they're afraid of missing out on? Are they a busy exec who can't make it to virtual conferences like this? Do they want to wrap up of what's going on? You know, what would be helpful to them? Ask yourself, who are they trying to impress? Because if you can figure that out, then you can start being a help to them. Do they need to gather 4 different bids for a focus group facility? Are they trying to come and win an amazing, you know, focus group facility so they can impress their boss, or are they just filling a bid? What's going on with this person in this role? I love this question, but you don't always know the right answer to this, but it is actually very interesting to contemplate. And that is, what are they afraid to admit? So for example, for me, I'm in marketing world all the time. And the reality is I'll have CMOs, CEOs, even people who are graphic designers, even people who are involved in social media say to me very quietly, sometimes at the end of a cocktail hour, you know, I really don't understand how to use a hashtag. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. It's interesting to know that there are things that we consider in our work to be so standard and so obvious, and they are not obvious to everybody. So I might ask you, when you think about your ideal client persona, someone you want to actually go out and who do you want to buy from you, what kinds of things are they afraid to say? Could you answer a few questions that are maybe a little bit more basic, or could you just ask, hey, what do you think about, and I'll use my world, what do you think about, you know, the changes in using hashtags? I might bring up a topic in a very uninterruptive and maybe a very unassuming way that puts them at ease so that we could start a real conversation. So these are 5 questions that you might want to ask yourself about who it is you're trying to connect to so that they will buy from you. So this is really the juice of what I have to share tonight. And, you know, I have a lot of slides that show 4 examples of all of these, but it's very hard to fit in this small of a time. And I hope that if I rattle through these pretty quickly, you'll get something really valuable. And maybe you could even jot the rule down or the tip or the trick and ask me on LinkedIn to clarify something for you, and I would be happy to. But a lot of people say, well, I want you to come and show us like some tips and tricks about how to do things better online. And I'm like, that's great. And you can see, I'll put it here. I know you want it. But for me, the mindset shifts, this are so important. The looking at it from the perspective of the persona is so important before you get to these tips and tricks, because these are tactics, but the other things are long-term strategies that will really help you shine. But these tips and tricks really work for me. I've created them over many, many years. The last one is not mine, but it's a reminder. The first one is vice versa. And what that reminds me, and I kind of use these, I think you can see these as anchors, just to remind me about the real world of how it works out on LinkedIn and Twitter. But with vice versa, I say, if I'm connected with them on LinkedIn, let me go see if I can connect with them on Twitter. And if I connected with them on Twitter originally, let me go see if I can find them on LinkedIn. And I'm using those 2 back and forth because really for business, so especially in North America, this is what we use for business. And I've left Facebook out of this conversation for a reason. But vice versa is important because you have people who show up with a little bit different issues on Twitter than they do on LinkedIn. They show up maybe a little bit differently. When they're on LinkedIn, they're really involved in a little bit more longer format learning. When they're out on Twitter, it's really up in the moment. Like when I'm in conference season and I'm going to visit people and I just happen to comment on something. You know, I can tweet 20, 25 times a day based on what's going on, but I don't live like that on LinkedIn. And so if what you are offering is something that is a quick decision, then you want to make sure that you are connected with them on Twitter, or if you need a lot of exposure or visibility to people. But if you connected with them on LinkedIn, as it turns out, they actually are far more active on Twitter, then you're going to end up losing them. And so the vice versa just reminds me that anybody that I met on Twitter, I need to go find on LinkedIn, and vice versa. My rule of 15 comes into talking about, people tell me all the time, well, I don't know what to write, or I don't want to be salesy, to which I usually respond, well, then don't be salesy. Don't avoid LinkedIn, just don't be salesy. But the rule of 15 specifically states that for every 15 posts, this is the way to actually break them down. 10 of those posts need to be interesting, right? So they need to show that you're interested in the subject matter. They need to show that you're a good source of information, that you understand the subject matter. They need to be interesting in some way. The next 4 need to be overtly helpful: a guide, a reminder of a date of an event, turning someone on to a great blog that's not your own, something that's helpful, like, oh, I found this checklist. It could be something that belongs to your own company, so think lead magnets, right? Or maybe COVID studies, as long as it is overtly helpful. For that 10 and then that 4, you earn the right to actually pitch your wares one time, to ask for the sale. Shame on the person who lives on social media all the time and never asks for the sale. Because people show up there specifically as a business in a professional marketplace in order to be seen and to see what's available in business. So we do need to actually ask for it, but unfortunately people get that balance wrong so often that it comes out as salesy or slimy. So the rule of 15 can really help you feel confident that you're not over salesy. Online, offline. This is really hard during the pandemic, but believe me, it'll come back in a way that we can do it. But I always remind myself, if I met someone online, I try and take it offline. I happen to travel a lot, that works for me, but a lot of people wouldn't even do that. Say they were in Chicago for the day, they wouldn't ask someone who they were connected to on LinkedIn in Chicago for a coffee real quick. But I do that all the time. And I'm telling you that it is worth the effort. Now, maybe you don't travel, but you're connected to people locally. If it was worth it meeting them online, it more than likely is worth it to meet them offline. Of course, there's an exception to the rules, but I think you get my point in that this is an anchor that can be very helpful in order to get more and more people to buy from you online. So online, offline. If you met them offline, make sure that you follow up and get connected with them online so that they get to see you over and over again. Too many times I have people meet people at a conference and they won't see each other until the next year of the conference. Why? They could have connected online and really kept that relationship going and built some professional rapport. A lot of things we miss out by not doing that. I like to remind people, please get out of LinkedIn jail. That is not the only place to comment, to connect with people. And too many times LinkedIn jail is like, who wants more email? Nobody. And so LinkedIn mail becomes a whole nother email set that I've got to take care of. Well, I don't live and die by that LinkedIn mail. That's a very passive way that people get information, but actually moving yourself over to the feed and commenting on things that people are doing is absolutely the juice of Twitter and of LinkedIn. And I'm telling you, if you take nothing else from this, you have to learn that whether you're going deeper with a particular client that you already have, or if you're looking for that next new client, the way to prospect is to get out of LinkedIn jail. The way to service and go deeper with your existing clients is to get out of LinkedIn jail. You don't want to be in the mail slot. You want to be over in the feed. And the easiest way to do it, let's just say, for example, I'm going out after the CMO of Netflix or an insights manager, whatever it is. So I find that person. Well, I did a good job finding them. But instead of now sending them a lame email in LinkedIn and getting in their LinkedIn jail, I'm going to actually go out and go to click their face and go to their profile. And then once I'm in their profile, I can scroll down just a little bit and see where their activity is. And then I'm going to say, see all on your activity. And then I'm going to go over and say, well, I want to see their posts. And voila. If you want to talk to Priscilla, then go to Priscilla's posts she made, because guess what people like when they engage with their posts. So go out, if you're prospecting or going deeper with a current client, go out and find their posts and start conversing there. It's a much better way to have something breathing and living, because other people are seeing it and they appreciate that you notice them. Very quickly, people ask me all the time about should they connect with everybody who tries to connect with them, and my answer is always Wayne Y. And it's kind of a funny anchor that I use, because I had a guy named Wayne Y who was constantly trying to connect with me. And he was a logistics specialist, a truck driver, a tracker, a personal investigator. You know, I mean, the list went on. It was total Creepsville. And so I remind you, yes, you can control who you could add into your connections and into your sphere of influence. And like I said, with the duty of care, be careful who you let in, because you need to take care of them. And if it makes no sense for me to be taking care of Wayne Y, then why should I have him in my connections? I have about 7,000 connections. I could probably have 13 or 20,000, but I constantly whittle things. Someone does something salesy to me, bye, you're out. Someone tries to use me to get to someone else in my network without actually asking me, bye, you're out. And so I have a sphere of influence that is very, very well cultivated and very well curated. So I always ask myself, Wayne Y. Two last things, tips and tricks that'll really make a big difference for you online and help you rise out of the noise so that people can buy from you as a person and not because of what company you work for. In fact, no matter what company you work for. Once you start getting into social media, you know that you're looking for great posts, and you know you're trying to understand your most ideal persona. And so it should make you listen. And what I like to listen for is when a perfect and ideal client says to me, oh, and then they say something. The moment someone expresses that kind of frustration, I am on it. I'm absolutely on it, because I'm listening and I'm going to write that down. That's going to be the beginning of my next post. If they say, you know, something that has just been frustrating them forever, they can't seem to get it resolved, I know that is the beginning sentence of what I'm going to actually show that I can resolve. Last thing on this is the golden hour. LinkedIn absolutely, absolutely has a golden hour when you post to it. Tweets only last 3 minutes, so it doesn't apply to Twitter. But for a golden hour, LinkedIn absolutely decides whether your post is worth sharing to the world within the first hour that it's been posted. And so you need to develop what I call a group of friendlies. You need to post what you're going to post, but in your comments, you need to tag people who would think this is relevant. Tag people who you think would help you find the right people for the content you created. That's a list of friendlies you can do, and that's kind of a nice, interesting kind of a shortcut. You don't want to be slimy, then don't be slimy. Don't tag someone that they have no idea why you're tagging them. I'm talking about meaningfully tagging people who you created this content. Who is it for? Who would do well to read it and to know about it? And if the answer is nobody, then you shouldn't post it. So keep in mind that golden hour, you need to actually nurture and take care of your posts in the first hour, otherwise nobody's going to see it. So I'll leave you with this last thing about how to calendarize it, because people often say to me, oh my gosh, you know, how much time? I don't have the time to take care of social media. How much time should I be doing? And there's a lot of questions around that. And so what I usually tell people is start with 15 minutes a day out on LinkedIn at least, and make sure that you stay consistent with it and don't overdo it. The worst thing you can do is go out and do a whole bunch of stuff because you kind of get excited and you can't take care of that much stuff, and all of a sudden you get busy at work and it all falls apart. LinkedIn and really any of the social media channels do not reward a lack of consistency. Start very small, but what I suggest is that you very much calendarize things you're doing. Maybe one day you're going to prospect for those first 15 minutes. Maybe the next day you're going to go comment on clients or prospects' posts. Stay doing the same thing. This is like batch processing, right? Maybe the next time you're going to add a note to somebody. You're going to actually go in to LinkedIn mail and make sure that you create some kind of a note. Maybe you're going to go, add note was what I meant to say, is like when you actually are prospecting for people, you need to make sure that you go click their face, and instead of just saying you want to connect, you actually want to add a note, and you want to tell them why you actually want to connect with them. And the way that you find people that are absolutely great opportunities for you to connect with is by seeking them out in other people's feeds. If there's been a feed where someone has, received 900 views and they've gotten 93 comments, and it is it's pertinent to what I do and what I sell, I want to go through every single one of those people who commented and look for people who are not my first connection. If they are a second or third connection, I want to click on their face, and I remind myself to calendarize this by saying add notes, because what I want to do is click on their face and add a note when I want to connect with them. Say, hey, I saw your comment on Bill McDowell's LinkedIn post. That was really interesting. I'd love to connect. And you add this note because you want to make sure that you're being meaningful and you're being strategic with who you're connecting to. Recently added, this could be another thing that you calendarize. Maybe this is on a Thursday. You always go to your network, and it will automatically put it in a recently added format. And you want to make sure that within a week of connecting to somebody, you send a personal note. So actually work your recently added feature in LinkedIn. The last thing is tagging. Maybe you just want to take 15 minutes to actually go tag a couple of people and posts you think would be helpful to them. It doesn't have to be promoting you or your company, but doing something that is meaningful. My last tip in that is just maybe you want to use the Pomodoro method. It's not my method. It's been around for a long time, but it's just about setting a timer. Social media can be a black hole. And so if you don't actually go out there and set a timer, you will not be focused. And the last little tip about that is when I set a timer, and let's say it's for 15 minutes, I'll let it count down, 14:59, 14:58. Okay, now I'm working on this because I've just trained my brain to tell me that we're focused and we got to get something done. So I just wanted to leave this by saying, I talked about this as people buy from people, even pandemic or not. And I've got to say that a lot of people freak out about what they're supposed to say online. But I have seen and shown over and over and over again that being yourself and putting a genuine message of something that you think, whether it's fancy or not, actually does the traction. And so this was a simple message that wasn't, about what I sell or what I do, but it was just a comment, and I made an interesting video about my feelings on the pandemic right at that time. And you can see from this, 2,150 views, 91 likes, and 42 comments. This started great conversation. It was meaningful, and it's not that hard. So you can see it's not overly polished. It is natural, conversational speak. And I didn't have to sell something. I just could go out there and be myself. And as Oscar Wilde said, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. So you can bury your head in the sand and just say, well, people aren't buying from anybody right now because everything's slowed down and blah, blah, blah. Whatever your particular excuse of the day is, bury your head in the sand, be like, I don't know what we should, is it appropriate? Should we be online? Should we be calling client? Or you can actually get out there. Companies also, and if you're in a more of a marketing, a CMO, position, or wondering, I totally understand. You may be paralyzed about what to do about marketing budget or what to do about sales budget and biz dev, but this is where complacent brands go to die. I do love Tom Fishburne. He's great. You should follow him online. So that's what I have today to share with you about how it is absolutely true that people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. They're really, the idea of loyalty is going away. And so if that's the case, how do we show up and really, shine a light on the person that we are, so that they can actually connect with us and make it meaningful. That's what I have. I will take questions.
Right. I have one question to start us off,
Sure.
and then we'll jump into others. Throughout your talk, I can't help but think about this, and a lot of our audience is folks on the corporate side of research who may not actually be actively selling to others, but the application of these concepts and tactics to what I can do as a corporate insights professional, when engaging with either the folks who I support, other heavy hitters within the business that I'm in, or even, God forbid, those who are in companies that I want to be a part of.
Absolutely. Everybody's selling something. So if you're not selling corporate research, but you're actually selling then your business expertise and your unique knack to create, to put a research project together. That was kind of goes into the persona question, who they're trying to impress. Everybody has a boss. So we've got to show up and we've got to actually put ourselves out, professionally to the world, because people are looking at our company. So let's say I'm not trying to sell anything, but I'm selling the brand that I'm representing right in that moment. So it really does qualify. But I hear what you're saying is that it feels like if you're not directly selling something, that maybe a social media platform isn't maybe quite as pertinent. But yeah, I do think it really is. It just means you have to switch your persona around.
We've got a couple of questions coming in that
Sure, shoot.
I can read them off to you, or if you.
Let's make it a little bit easier. I'm not talking the whole thing. Why don't you read them if anybody's not in the chat, and then I'll answer them.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so Doug is asking, what are some good ways to introduce yourself to a new connection, someone you haven't met before in person, without sounding pushy or salesy? I've heard complaints about, I saw your profile on LinkedIn, and just making sure you saw this kinds of language.
Oh, that is so great. Yeah. Okay. So I love that, without sounding pushy or salesy. And to that, I always say, well, then don't be pushy or salesy. So then I'm going to answer the rest of the question. So I would agree with you, Doug. I complain about people who say, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. And I have to say, because I do this for a living, I immediately get really sassy. Like, good for you. You can read. Like, I don't care. Of course you saw mine, because I'm an influencer and it came up, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is bragging. This is how you would feel. It's like, so it's like, you think about people in insights, we're always in the so whatification. If you're a brand and in client, and you're an actual corporate researcher, that is absolutely your job. So whatification. What are we going to do with this data, right? And so, yes, congratulations. You have a free LinkedIn profile and you saw my profile. I don't understand what that means to me. And so I will write back before I connect with someone, and I will say, I understand you saw mine. If we were to connect, what do you think we would talk about first? And I wait to have them, because I want to connect meaningfully with people. And so that's how I would handle, it's kind of two questions here. That's how I would handle it when people say, I just make sure you saw this. And I would say, really, why? So I just want to, I want to start that conversation at every point. But then you get that feeling and that other people don't like it. And so it's very hard to go out and connect with people, to which I would say, find a reason. Now, don't go read their profile and say, I saw you're a marketing manager, and so I thought I should connect. They're really, I guess my question is, if there is no other reason but you saw them online, then I don't know that you should be connecting. There has to be something. But I bet there is, if it is someone that you've identified that is a really good prospect or a reason why you want to connect with them, the one trick that I talked about, going to their profile, so clicking their face and then scrolling down to the activity section. It's about 3 sections down on LinkedIn, and you go all the way to the right and you click see all, and then it'll bring you up to their actual feed. But again, you have one more action you have to do. There's their feed, and then there's articles they've written, and then there's posts, and then there's something else. I can't remember the fourth one. But you either want to go read one of their articles or read one of their posts. And if those things are important to you, then you do have a reason you want to connect with them. And don't be lazy and say, that's because I saw you. you know? And the one thing I would say here is that I use, I have a cocktail hour rule. So I have so many LinkedIn rules. But how you would say it at a cocktail party is how you would say it on LinkedIn, right? So first of all, people go, well, I don't talk with anybody on LinkedIn because I think it's rude. And I think, well, when you walk into a cocktail party, do you do this? No, it's rude to not talk to somebody, you know? So you want to open up conversations, but you want to start small. You don't want to walk in a cocktail party and say, hey, anyone want to go home with me tonight? Right? So, but you're going to find small talk, just like you would at a cocktail party. So we're going to find that small talk online. And it doesn't need to be, hi, my name's Priscilla. I'm stuck here at the party, so I thought I'd come talk with you. And that's exactly what this person's doing. But it could be, you know, why don't you tell me why you're here? Or who else do you know at this party? Or, you know, I noticed you're a part of this group. Who do you know at this group? You know, so there's a lot of other questions we can ask that aren't overly contrived, that are just real conversation starters.
We've got a question from Adam. Among the big brands, who has done a good job of shifting their presence to be more relatable in that people buy from people example?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, a lot of the brands, for example, you look at like Amazon's done fantastic, and I, you know, love them or hate them, but I'm telling you, Amazon has done a really fantastic job in doing that. And I kind of would take it a little bit further and say, in terms of what people call employee advocacy, I don't really like that word, but in terms of employee activation, you know, certainly Netflix has done a good job like that. Twitter actually has done a great job. Pandora's done a great job on that, where they actually get their employees to show up and be, you know, show up as people on social media. And the reason is not because they're selling something, it's because people buy from people, but also people want to be employed by people, not from corporations, right? And so when you actually activate your employees to show up and be the genuine people that they can be as professionals online, what ends up happening is you attract the best and brightest, because people see them all online and see that they are allowed and in fact encouraged to be thought leaders and not just repping the company's marketing message over and over again and slamming it in sales down someone's throat. They're allowing them and encouraging them to do kind of what I call the rule of 15. Be yourself. There's 14 other posts. Yeah, I've got to post one to make a sale and to, you know, do what I'm doing. But the other 14 can really show who I am qualitatively as a professional. So those are a couple brands I think have done pretty well.
Okay, so in your rule of 15, any, I guess, tips for the interesting and the helpful?
Yeah.
You know, what are the things that come across not with an underlying agenda, as it were, right?
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, everything has an agenda. It's all propaganda, right? But you know, I do things that might be, I'm a little bit more whimsical. I am running a creative company, so I get to do things that are a little funnier. In this COVID time, I've been doing, you know, crazy contests because everybody just needs a little bit of lightness, you know, and I'm like, come on, let's just help each other a little bit. But I also started something called, with the hashtag that I mentioned, hashtag always be helping, where we just really come directly out and say, hey, have you noticed someone who's helping online? You know, nominate them. I'll send the, hey, it's for reals because I've got a t-shirt. So tell us that they've been helpful and I'll send a t-shirt. And it just kind of starts creating a tribe online of people who are engaging, right? And when that starts happening, it's not that hard to find things that are interesting. And you start actually reading through your blogs, your journals, your emails, everything else a little bit differently. For example, when this, you know, conference came up and I saw it, that it was available, I thought, oh, I tagged a couple of friends. I'm like, hey, this really is up your alley. I think you would like it. Well, what's in it for me? What's in it for me is that then people see that, number one, I'm involved in the MR insights, that I'm in the know. And secondly, if it really is right for them, I've built rapport. And so there is an underlying agenda. Someone else just described me the other day as altruistic, and I laughed. I'm like, I have an agenda just like everyone else. It's just that part of my agenda is overtly helping people so that when they are in a jam, when they are stuck, they'll call me. Right? And I'd rather have those people who are calling me out of an appreciation than calling me out of, well, I guess, you know, maybe I'll call you now. Is this what you do or not? You know, so I've actually self-selected the people who end up calling me by the way that I act online. And I kind of use that as like a fish and bait kind of thing. You get the kind of fish based on the bait you get. And I think this does apply to corporate researchers. If you show up online and are constantly, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? I don't, you know, if you don't see the people who provide your qualitative research or your panel or anything like that as partners, if you can't collaborate and talk about what's going on in the industry and how the American consumer's face is changing and how the American consumers, you know, buying habits are changing on a radically pace every like 2 hours right now. If you don't show up and want to engage and talk about things that are interesting and difficult, then you are then creating transactional relationships. So starting conversations with people that are really more qualitative and don't necessarily lead to a sale with you is helpful. You know, we had a guide for a, I know this is going to sound weird at the beginning, but hear me out on this. We had a guide, a lead magnet, a download that we created like a quiz for finding what kind of wine was right, you know, for you. And we built it for a catering company. And you would think, well, they don't sell wine. Why is this important to them? But we were solving a problem that was peripheral to people who buy massive amounts of catering. They needed to discover certain wines and they wanted to discover them a certain way and they wanted to find them based on affordability. We took that problem, created something, was helpful, shared it out to those people who self-selected that. Well, as it happens, that builds rapport with the catering company. People who buy, you know, wine in that kind of quantity very often need catering. And so you have to think about that, whether you're a corporate researcher or whether you have a focus group facility or you're recruiting, you know, for qualitative, whatever it is, there's something that your ideal client needs that you don't sell. Could you help them solve that problem to build rapport? And then when they're stuck, they will remember you.
It's funny, I've always been such a big proponent of networking for that very reason. Like, no, you're not likely to, land a big fish by going to this, this dinner mixer, but you might have a conversation. You might meet someone that, down the road might be able to, put you in touch with someone who might be an HR prospect, someone who I can help out from whatever capacity. You never know. So I'm loving the always be mantras. I always be networking is mine. I dig to always be helpful. Alec Baldwin is a hero with his always be closing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think on that note, I will, that reminds me of the question someone else had about what brands are doing a good job. I have to say SurveyMonkey does a really good job of going out there and always being curious. That's how I see them online. And I think that they do a very good job of just always asking interesting questions of people. They don't go out there, sell my stuff, sell my stuff, sell my stuff. They ask and they ask and they ask. And you think about that, actually it's spot on with their brand, right? They always ask. And I know that's somebody who's in your space, and but we can learn, from that. How are they actually showing up? Researchers, whether they're corporate researchers or they're freelancers or they're in qual or quant, by nature, we all should be just, deathly curious, right? So let's go online as curious individuals.
Very cool. Let me double check to make sure we haven't missed any questions.
We're good there.
I don't think we have.
Well, I would love it if everybody, connected with me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, let me know. I am trying to always be helping. So I will help you by either answering that question or connecting you with someone. And as always,